So welcome to the Holistic Horse Conference. I'm Dr. Jeff Grognet. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Joan Ranquet, animal communicator, author, and TEDx speaker.
Okay, so the two of us are really looking forward to welcoming April Love. And she belongs with HolisticHorseworks. And she's the owner of that. And what she does is empowers horse owners to take healing into their own hands in order to keep their horses healthy, happy, and rideable through their 30s. Okay, that's quite a wonderful thing to be able to do. And at the same time, they can save thousands of dollars on veterinary care. And the way she does that is she's created a unique program, and it's an approved methodology. It became certified, and she teaches it through in-person and hands-on clinics, as well as virtual home study courses. And she's also trained and vetted many instructors who share that practice worldwide. I'm in Canada. She has an instructor in Canada, and then she's got several in other countries. I think about 9 of them altogether. So anyway, the main thing is all these methodologies offer a systematic approach to healing the horse's body. And it's a blend of massage, Reiki, bioenergy, and intuitive listening. So it's quite a large thing. So welcome, April.
Thank you.
Okay. And so the main thing is you've got this program that you're giving, but we want to talk about what it can do. And as you say, as we were talking, it really emphasizes that horses are communicating with us. So let's move into that. What are they trying to tell us?
So when you walk up to your horse, are they looking at you? Are they turning your butt to you? When you put them in the cross ties and you're grooming them, are they happily relaxed, or are they pinning their ears and swishing their tail? When you put the saddle blanket on, are they pinning their ears and swishing their tail and shaking at the withers? All of these things are signs that there's some discomfort in their horses. So I try to teach horse owners how to see that themselves instead of following the, oh, she's just marish, or he's just, being that way today. And I tell people, your horse did not wake up this morning say, I really want to piss off my horse owner and not take that right lead.
So what are some of the other things that people would overlook? I mean, it seems like that there's also more subtle cues. What else would people overlook?
If you're riding a horse, by the time you give a leg aid, I tell people you've already told the horse 3 times what you want to do. The first one when you envisioned it in your mind, the second when your body got ready, and if you had to lay rein or leg on the horse, that's the 3rd time they've told you, I don't really want to do that move.
I see.
And what could some of that stuff mean?
Most horses are out of balance by 6 months of age. So being labeled, dominant left lead horse and not being able to do right lead canter because it's a weakness and we should make them do it more is not right. Usually it's a first rib wither hip combination of not being able to canter on that lead correctly and comfortably. And us forcing it is making the body compensate. So it's looking at that. I teach people how to squat down and look at the hooves from the rear of how the horse is landing on the hooves and how the hoof is growing, and stand on a bucket 10 feet behind a horse and look at your horse. One side of the butt's higher, one side of the back's lower, one shoulder's bigger, the withers look crooked, and that's what you're putting a saddle on. And that's like us trying to do a gym workout in an underwire bra and a corset. You just can't do it. You're trying to, when you girth up that horse, you're trying to make a crooked horse fit a straight saddle. You're going to have issues. You're going to have bucking. You're going to have ear pinning. You're going to have horses walking off when you're mounting.
There's an entire industry set in veterinary land set up on saddle fit, right? And so if you got any reflection on that compared to what you're talking about?
So I worked on a horse in the Netherlands that was really crooked, and we did some things, and she looked at her horse and she said, I just paid $3,500 for a custom saddle to fit this horse, and now it's no longer going to fit. I said, well, do you want to keep buying a crooked saddle, or do you want to ride a straight horse?
Yeah. Yeah. As you were saying this, I'm thinking of those things I did way back when I went through vet school, and that is they're talking about, okay, you've got to look at that and see what type of saddle will fit those withers, for example, right? So yeah, that's pretty neat. So what you're saying is that their posture, stance, whatever, is acting as a form of communication to us, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And I mean, you're talking about just with so far just physical stuff. What
Well,
else does it work on?
when your horse is standing and the cross ties are tied to the trailer, if they're not standing square, their body is not in balance. Both front hooves should be side by side, both hind feet should be side by side with the leg cocked. If you always have one foot in front of the other, you already have discomfort. And just loading the feet like that, they're not going to grow correctly when you have more weight on the left front because the right front is standing out. So these are all the little things that I show people, or I'll walk up and say, so you have 52 degrees on your left front and 54 on your right front. And they go, yeah, my farrier is always working on that. Well, we need to work on the body to change the heel height.
Yeah.
And so with some of that and I want to get into head stuff in a second, but would that be more the alignment of the spine? Would that be more the hips, the shoulder? How does somebody start to determine, like, oh, this left foot is a little bit in front of the right foot? Is that the shoulders? Is that how does somebody know, or do they just have to consult you?
Well, I do free distance readings. People send me left and right side picture of their horse, and I give them an 8-page report on what's actually going on with their horse, atlas axis, ribs, withers, other issues in the body. But my whole program is based on first rib misalignment. And every horse that I have seen lately by 6 months of age has at least one first rib misalignment. And that's going to determine which leg the foal puts forward to graze. And the foot that goes forward is always going to be the low heel, and the one that goes back is always going to be the high heel. So then when you bring them up to stand, it's not going to be comfortable. When you're starting to see the kissing spine, all the horses that were diagnosed with that I worked on had first rib misalignment both sides, so neither shoulder could move correctly, and they're using the neck muscles like your rhomboids and trapezius to pick up the shoulder. So you're tightening in the withers and you're tightening in the lumbar for the horses to compensate. And all the rider knows is that they're heavy on the fore.
Mm.
So they're using the bit and they're cranking on the horse's mouth to try and get that horse to come up and be light instead of trying to figure out what's not working correctly in the front end.
So for somebody who doesn't know what a first rib misalignment is, what is that and how did it happen? How could it have happened?
So with the horses, there's quite a few ways. So with foals, it's usually running and tumbling.
Mm.
The other one is the foals that go to sleep next to a fence and wake up on the other side of the fence. The struggle that you don't know about when they got up. With mature horses, it's usually when they're pulling a front shoe with a hind or running across a pasture on that lead and it goes down in a mud bog or gopher hole and the shoulder's being pulled down. It tweaks that first rib. On my website, I actually have a picture of a full skeleton, a real one, front on, with the first rib misalignment. You can see that there isn't gap on one side and there is gap on the other side between the point of the shoulder and the rib. And actually in those hooves, you can see the difference in the hoof growth, that the compensating side has a bigger, wider hoof, and the first rib impingement side has a smaller, narrow hoof. So that's what's starting most of your high-low hoof syndrome.
So then most horses have this.
I have yet to see a horse that's been out running anywhere that doesn't have a first rib misalignment. And it's so deep under the shoulder that a lot of other body workers don't work on it or don't know how to release it without severely yanking on the horse or doing something.
And do you have ways that the average person could unhook their own first rib, their horse's
Yeah.
rib?
So that is in the program that I sell. I do have over 190 helpful videos on my YouTube channel on midribs and pelvis and bladder sweeps and some other things that can really help people. And I actually have one on my people part on how to do first ribs on ourselves, because when our first rib comes up and you're using your neck muscles, you get tendonitis, bursitis, carpal tunnel syndrome, and frozen shoulder. So just imagine that in the horses. We can choose not to use our arm a certain way. The horses can't. They're forced into that right lead canter until they get it, but the right stifle is compensating and the left hock is compensating. And a lot of the body workers that don't ride don't realize that the horses are working at diagonal. So they'll say he's off on the left front. And I'm like, well, no, it's kind of the right rear throwing to the left front.
Yeah, I definitely.
So when you talk, when you talk about a misalignment of the rib, in the other view or the other field that can impact on that, of course, is chiropractic. So are you also implying that there's a problem with the vertebra, or is it strictly just the ribs that you're talking about with here, April?
I didn't bring the picture with me, but it's just a little tweak of the ribs. So on us, our rhomboid trapezius muscles pulls up the first rib, and then the collarbone can't move forward and out of the way when the first rib tips up. So it's just shifted a little bit, and it just doesn't allow the freedom of that shoulder. So on the foal, that's going to be the leg that's always back because the shoulder can't come through all the way. So normally the high-low syndrome, the high heel, not clubfoot, the high heel is the first rib side.
Okay.
And so but what you're asking, Jeff, I mean, I think that eventually that sort of thing is just going to compound and do things like compress the spine. So yes, but definitely.
Right. So in a wild horse, they just won't choose to do right lead canter. But unfortunately, under a treed saddle and with everything that we do in repetitive movement, our training makes the compensation in the horses. You know, the withers to be sore and the saddle and how the saddle's sitting on the horse. And then the horse keeps compensating. And the trainer's like, we're going to keep doing right lead canter until they get it right. And then you put it back in a stall and the muscles are going into spasm and the horse can't work it out, roll it out. And the next day he's tight again. And those are the horses that have to work out of it, you know, and warm up. So I took $19,000 worth of classes because I did 50-mile endurance rides. And I got tired of the vet saying, you get pulled at mile 30 and you're grade 2 lame. Well, where is it? What do I treat? Well, you know, we're at a vet thing. I don't know. Give it some bute and, you know, go home. We don't have time to do a lameness diagnostics, and ask your vet when you get home in a couple of days, and they'll nerve block it and tell you what it's not. Those answers were just not good enough for me. And when it's consistent, every time you go to an endurance ride and you're pulled at mile 20 or mile 40, I just wanted to start figuring out the compensations, you know. So if you're on left lead, or left diagonal trot all the time and you don't switch, you're working one side of your horse's body. You're going to make tighter muscles. You're going to pull the withers out of alignment. The muscles and spasm on the longissimus in the back are going to pull the lumbar too close together into the psoas. So then you are having chiropractic issues.
One of the things I love to say is that, you know, our animals, whether it's dog, cats, horses, don't have a way of releasing or expressing their emotional life unless they've got a great animal communicator. But to me, the best way really is body work. Because it is a way of getting not only the body in alignment, but the muscles are going to have emotion. There's going to be a story there. Even for that fool that got stuck on the other side of the fence and did the whole rib thing at that point, that fool had a panic. That fool had a lot of emotion in order to get untangled. And so then that becomes like just a mini trauma compounded with other mini traumas that add to that rib thing. Talk to us about how much the emotions play into like the muscles getting stuck in a certain, almost frozen, or even the spine or the alignment?
So in all of the classes that I took, I've learned Robert Tennyson Stevens and Louise Hayes about body issues, but also Dr. Bradley Nelson with the trapped emotions, and emotions affect organs. And if you look at, you know, a people chiropractic chart, they'll tell you that, you know, this emotion affects this organ and this organ affects this part of the spine. You know, so grief and something else affects lungs, and anger is liver, and fear is kidneys. There's always something. So in my program, while we're doing myofascial and cranial releases, we also bring in releasing defense posture and doing bladder meridian sweeps to help the horse turn on their own energy, you know, because right where we put dead cow and dead tree, you know, the saddle, is where all the association points are on the bladder meridian.
Right.
So I developed like a horse yoga, which is your diagnostic tool. So my clients knew that if their horse went down in the trailer or something happened, they had some tools. They would do bladder sweeps to calm the horse, and they would start doing my yoga to put the body back in alignment. You still have to address, you know, the emotional things. I did a couple podcasts on grief and horses and their herd mate dying, or people don't realize you buy a horse and you take it home and you're like, great new toy. And this horse is all upset saying, I don't even know where to sleep. I don't know it's safe. I'm not happy with this water source. You know, I always tell people, did you tell your horse you were going to be finding him a new home? Did you explain that process? And the horses I trained, I would be like, I don't have a job for you anymore, and I need to find you a good home. And I would let my horse choose out of the people that came to look at him. I tell people they're sentient beings like a dolphin.
I always tell people that the minute you bring any animal home, there's a process of grief for them. Absolutely. And they're going to audition for us for a little while. You know, it's the way it is.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Really good way.
You know, if you adopt a 5-year-old child, at least you still have that same language, where that pet had a language with whoever had it before and doesn't know the new language with us.
And so it gets trapped in the body. And that's exactly.
Okay. I'm going to circle back to the thing you were talking about, the hoof. And that means it can be long, it can be short, and obviously different parts of the hoof. And so if I'm a horse owner and I'm looking at my horse, and I can see, I call them gross defects in the hoofs. And that is, I can look at the left, I can look at the right and say, gee, that toe's long, that one's shorter. Something's going on. You know, that's about as far as most people can go. And then the farrier comes in and he fixes it.
Right, but he only fixes the front.
For a time.
Mm-hmm. He only fixes the front. I tell all my clients he can shape it, he can trim it, he can roll the toe, he can do everything so the front looks pretty good. You need to squat behind the horse, 10 feet behind, and look at the heel bulbs and look at the shapes. Because when you have a crushed inside heel with an outside flare, I follow that up into the groin muscles if it's in the hind legs. If it's in the front and you have a crushed inside heel with the flare going out, you have tight sternum and pectoral. Your shoulder, your knee, and your hoof should be in alignment in the front, not base narrow. And in the hind, your hip, your hock, and your hoof should be in alignment. You see these 3- and 4-year-old cutting horses where they have this huge butt and these tiny little feet almost touching. And I'm like, oh my God, the whole psoas is in spasm. Are you injecting those hocks already? And they go, yeah, how'd you know? Because your whole psoas is in spasm, so they can't pick up the knee, which is your stifle, to bring it forward, and your whole hind end's going like this. And look at all those nice bunchy muscles. No, muscles should be soft, you know. They're like, oh, I worked so hard to get those. I said, that's pure lactic acid in there. You know, that's a soft muscle is a healthy soft muscle. It doesn't matter how strong the horse is. It shouldn't be just a cut all the way down to the hamstring.
Good.
You know, so how they're loading the hoof and how they're standing on the hoof, what's going to grow. The farrier can make it look nice, and in 8 weeks, that same shape is back.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just doing an orthotic for a
Right.
while, but sometimes like in people, you can't turn around your pronation a lot of times. But the thing is, you talk about horses, you're not talking about a foot problem here. You're talking about something higher up, and that's what you have to address. Okay.
Right, how the body chooses to land on that hoof. And
Yeah.
that's where your side bone and ring bone start. So if your shoulder, knee, and fetlocks are not in alignment, those bones in the hoof and fetlock are not in alignment. You're going to have heat. Calcium's going to go to heat. You're going to get side bone and ring bone.
Yeah. And because I'm a veterinarian, I can say this. Veterinarians aren't trained to find this, are they?
That's why, I did once I did the $19,000 in classes because I kept having questions. Okay, so you're doing acupressure and acupuncture, but all the meridians are blocked on the hooves because you have so much calcification. You're not looking at that. You're not picking up the hoof and seeing that the frog's off center. I had a client that had been gone for 2 years and she wanted to do the 100 Tevis mount ride. And I picked up her horse's feet and I said, your frog's off center. You're not going to do 14,000 feet of downhill trotting on this horse this year. And she didn't because she knew, if your hoof's not there, you cannot do that type of competition.
That's right. Yeah.
So each class didn't look at the whole horse, and you fix the body, and no one was looking at the head. And if this TMJ is dropped, the horse is heavy on that bit, but he's also not chewing and masticating his food this way. He's chewing up and down, making the hooks and waves.
So I would love to talk about the head. So much also happens in the head, the cranial bones, all of that. Maybe you could walk us through what it would feel like. Is it headachy? Is it, if bones are off, is it permanent? Is it,
It's permanent until they get my level 3. So my level 3 is actually cranial decompression, where we actually manually move the bones back up. So 25 years ago, we had the flat web halters with the holes that ripped out and the cheap snap. So the horse spooked and pulled back, and it was a wide web halter. Less damage was done to the horse. They ran away. They got to process that fear and entrapment as they ran away. You're like, oh, there went my $20,000 horse down the street. Now they have the knotted rope halters and the, patience poles, and more damage is done to the horse when a 3 or 4 month old horse is tied with that type of rope halter. And, if the horse stayed like this, the halter rope would go over. But when they're in fight or flight and the head goes up, it slides up behind here, it catches on the back of the occiput and it shoves everything down. And if you watch a horse that can't get away, they eventually lean to one side. And that's when all the bones on one side drop, and that TMJ will drop as well. So I actually have videos and stuff, and I say to get a tape measure and tape from in the middle of the pole down to each side lip line, and you'll see that one side is an inch or two lower. And that's the one that the horse can't give to the rein on the bit. And the trainer keep pulling on it. It's just destabilizing the TMJ joint. I actually manually pull all those bones back up, and that actually is helping things like uveitis, IR, Cushing, because all of that is in the head and metabolic. So to me, the knotted rope halters that are doing all the damage to our horses nowadays.
And even spooking with the eyes being off.
Even this, I bought this off of eBay. It's actually a real horse head thing, but you can actually see that the bones are off balance. And they ground this part off, but the eyes too. So when you come down to the lacrimals and everything, we've had a lot of horses with weepy eyes. And once we do the level 3 cranial, then everything can just drain, and the bright pinkish inflammation on the corner of the eye seems to go away.
Hmm. That's it looks like it has there's so many effects going on here, and all like what you've got. And I guess the biggest part is you've talked about standing on a bucket behind the horse, getting down on the ground, doing all this, looking. Are there other ways for us to I'll use the word listen or appreciate what they're telling us?
Well, I try to keep my podcasts and my YouTube videos under 5 minutes, one subject. So I have how to check gallbladder 21 for first rib misalignment, how to tell if your horse's hips are out of alignment. Does your horse have a belly lift? So there's 5 things to my horse yoga. The carrot stretched back to the stifle is going to open the cervical, right? But it's going to stretch your longissimus muscle and everything on this side. When the horse's shoulders aren't moving correctly and they're using their neck muscles to pick up the front end, all of a sudden you get this short-necked horse. You're like, I thought my horse had a longer neck when I bought him. So it's about keeping the cervicals open and moving and not impinging the thoracic outlet. And then the next one is leg circles. It helps to free up ribs like 2 through 7. So if you do the leg circles down into the drunken horse pose, it's really freeing up your horse's shoulders. But you'll notice, wow, one side went really good and one side didn't. You don't stop there. You need to keep doing it until you do the left side and the right side, like working a T-post out of the ground. You got to do the left shoulder. You got to do the right shoulder. And if you go and do a hard event and you know your horse couldn't do the yoga, you're going to have compensations after. The tail pull stretches out the lumbar, the butt tuck lifts ribs 18, 17, and stretches out the psoas muscles, and the belly lifts, brings everything up, expands the ribs in the intercostals. It helps to move any stagnant food in the gut. If your horse is colicking, we have a video about how to do butt tuck and belly lift at the same time to help pass the gas. You know, so in those podcasts and in the YouTube is all these little diagnostic things. The only thing I keep private is how to release the first rib, and we teach that in the program.
Okay. There's lots of learning opportunities there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But lots of free stuff, because people will be out there just, you know, I have a lame horse and I have a little video on how to test the tendons and the suspensories. You know, all these things when I was doing endurance and they just said your horse is lame or you have a C on gut sounds, I always was, but why? But why? C on gut sounds, you know, means that all the blood, you know, left the stomach to go into the muscles because you were going too fast uphill at an anaerobic heart rate. You know, so I always had a why behind all of these things that I was told.
Okay. So your emphasis is body work, obviously, right? And
well,
so
body, mind, and spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the other stuff. Yeah. But the key is if horse owners get into having body work done, is that going to prevent them progressing to have all these problems? Or has to be figured out?
The whole point of having, you know, a nice, sane, rideable horse when they're older, 15, they're already starting to become arthritic because none of this was addressed when they were 2 years old and went into training and did repetitive training. So I even have a video program on how to work on foals. When you start this that young and you can keep everything in alignment and you know about the proper nutrition, then you have that brain on that horse that as we are older, we feel safe on. My endurance horse that I did 2,000 miles of endurance in 2 years with no vet poles. And at the time I was 215 with tack on a little 14 hand Arab. So that's a lot when you're doing Death Valley and 8,000 feet and coming back down. And my friend has him now and he's 29 and she still rides him on the trail. And he came to me at age 8 from the racetrack with a whole bunch of problems. Couldn't catch him. He was like, no, don't like this job. So it's just about looking at all these subtle signs and knowing it sooner. And it's not your horse just, oh, my mare's just being up, you know, today. No, right. She might be hormonal. She might have gas. There might be something else going on. And my program teaches horse owners just a little diagnostic check every week and, you know, lift a leg, lift a rib, do some butt scrunches, put the hips back in alignment. And when you do that all the time, then you're riding like a perfectly balanced horse. I had a real famous endurance rider ride my gelding so I could ride the green horse. She's like, he's so nice. You just think about trot, he trots. You just sit down and he walks. You go, and off you go. And he was just so smooth. I said, because I've always worked on him.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, it's unfortunately, I saw in the veterinary field, this would be very revolutionary, but also it's not something that veterinarians, unless you take a course like yours, they haven't even heard of this, right? And that is the veterinarians look at animals, but horses, mechanically. Okay, and that is, oh, they're taking the weight off their right hind, so therefore we have to start looking at the hip, the stifle, the hock, whatever, and that is where is the problem? But they don't look beyond that to go, oh, if there's a problem in the right hind, maybe I should be checking that left front,
Left front.
you know?
Way more dynamic. It's biodynamic versus mechanical.
Yeah.
But what surprises me is vets know what the skeleton is. So they should be able to tell if the right hip is back by 4 inches. I've seen pre-purchase exams on 100-mile endurance horses, ewe-neck, roachback, hunter's bump with 4 hooves that don't match for $30,000 and $40,000 horses, and they pass them and they say, just keep injecting those joints. And I'm like, but there's nothing in this whole body that's working correctly when you have those postures.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately, you've moved into the field from a veterinary pure veterinary medicine standpoint of going, oh, chiropractors. They really don't do anything. They just go and start pressing on stuff, and they think they're helping stuff, but that's the veterinary view a lot of them hold. Right now, whereas I took courses in chiropractic, so I know what it does. Right? And the point being is, unless you get into the holistic world, they can't appreciate that.
Right, because if you're just thunking a bone and you're not looking at the muscles or the tight sternum attachments, the intercostals, is a diaphragm released, all of that is just going to be pulled right back out. So when people go to a chiropractor, my best chiropractor in Auburn, California, said you should go walk for 10 minutes before you get back in your car. Because when you get back in your car, you're using your right leg, your right psoas, you're sitting in, you're pulling the left one in, you're using your right leg only in the car. By the time you get home, you're not in alignment anymore. You just pulled your whole pelvis out.
Yeah.
I always think that about human massage, right? Like we're like, oh, let's go sip tea. And it's like, no, if it was a dog, a cat, a horse after a massage, they'd go move and do what they need to do. I always keep moving after a massage for that reason.
When I do a session on a horse, I do the body and I'll tell them that they should have the head done, and we can shift all this, which will save them money on teeth floating because the horse will be able to chew correctly. They have to have 3 days off, and the horse walks away looking drunk and having like each foot is like so heavy because everything in the body is just reprogramming. And in 3 days, they're like, oh my God, I had a totally new horse. You know, because your sphenoid is your stifles and your TMJ is your hind end. Everything is so connected. And that's why I kept taking more courses. Well, you're missing the head and you're missing the foot and you're missing the energy meridians and, you know, you're missing the emotions of the horse. And so my program just really blends all of that. I have people doing home studies for 5 years. Hi, April, I'm still working on that. You know, so whoever gets my programs, they always have access to the updated information because I want people to be able to work with their vets, but, you know, to be able to fix little things, not have to do $750 for a lameness diagnosis.
So talk to me a little bit about, you're working on that hind end and it's affecting the head. I mean, I know how that goes, but I don't know that everybody knows how that goes. Tell me what that looks like.
Well, if you just read about cranial sacral, everything is attached to the dural tube, the nerves, the central nervous system, your whole motor function. Everybody that has whiplashes and concussions needs cranial sacral work. They'll find out that they start having autoimmune and allergies and stuff later on when cranial bones aren't in flux. I'm not the biggest expert on it, like some of the cranial people, but I took enough classes to know what to do and what it actually affects. And just being able to ride a horse light on the bit and for them to chew their food this way instead of up down. When they have the head compression, you will see big muscles start to grow up here, and you'll see the masseters start to go hollow because they're not chewing this way, and the hyaloid ties into thyroid function and laryngeal nerve, and everything down there in the thoracic outlet is affected. So people say, oh, no, just fix the body. Don't do the head. Just need the body to work. And I'm like, but this is the bit. This is how they see. This is how they chew. This is their digestion. I just know that when we do the body and the head, the alignment stays better. And they have to do the horse yoga for 6 weeks because that realigns the body themselves. And then the farrier starts to notice he can cut and trim the feet differently, the hooves, because the horse is now standing on them and loading them correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. So so that's one reflection of how your horse is doing, what the farrier has to look at and correct.
Right.
Right.
And then you have all the horses that are kicking on the hind end just because they have a sore SI joint, and people are like roping the leg or sedating the horse so they can get the hind shoes on instead of addressing the sore SI joint. So I actually teach people where you can't pick up that horse's hind leg and pull it out. You actually have to drag it along the ground and cross it and put it on a shoer stand behind, so the SI joint can relax on just that one leg and hip so the farrier can work on it safely. You pull it out to the side and that whole groin goes into fire. You can just stand behind the horse, and the horse isn't trying to kick. He's saying, let go. It hurts when you put that leg.
Great point there. Thanks, April. Okay. Any more sort of final thoughts on this?
Are you asking her or me?
I'm asking you.
What were you asking me?
Certifiable? No, just wondering. We've covered a lot of material here, and that main thing is people need to realize what their horse is telling them, by their stature and also behavior and what's going on. And so, to sum it up, what would you tell people on this?
Basically, it's a sentient being like the dolphins. They take on our emotional stuff, and we need to start waking up and care more about them. And, look up my channels and everything, because we have so much information nowadays. I can't watch an hour-long podcast. Everything of mine is under 5 minutes, one subject, and I get right into it in my podcasts and my videos. There isn't anything about who I am. Hi, you got a lame horse? Here's how you do the tendon and suspensory check. Because I had to learn that. If your horse is grade 1 lame, is it in the front end? Is it in the hind end? Are you going to give him time off? Can you keep riding? Can you walk on foot for a while? All those little things. And I made the Horse 101, what's really going on with your horse, for people to explain how they get crooked. It says, if your horse is in the trailer and it's rocking, you do not open the door and go inside to see what's wrong. You need to cut the rope from the outside and let the horse settle before you open that escape hatch door. Or, do you balance your horse trailer tires? Because they tell you don't have to balance trailer tires, but if you get in the back of that trailer at 60 miles an hour, it's shaking and rocking because you don't have the weights on the tires. And where are your bridles hanging? Right on that wall, going clang, 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 and you wonder why your horse doesn't want to get in the trailer. It talks about pasture paradise, hoof health, all of that, and that's what I give out in the free ebook that we're doing. And once you understand how your horse got that way, then you can start understanding, what do I need to do to get them back to perfect health.
That sounds great. Yeah, you hold up your book and tell everyone what we're going to have the link for that below the webinar. So what is that about, April?
So I have 4 books on Amazon. This is Horse 101, How They Get Crooked, When They Pull Back. I had found a cute lady who did all the little cartoons. I wanted it to be like that book, Don't Squat with Your Spurs On, that people pick up. And I offer them to horse shows and events. They can buy them for $4 each and give them for prizes or sell them or whatever. But this is what my free ebook is that I give out. So you can read at home what's actually going on. And they went, oh my God, I read your book. And yeah, and it talks about what starts colic and what breed of horse you want. And that just gets people introduced to it. And
Mhm.
102 is what I do for the cuts and the wounds and the owies and stuff in a holistic type way. And that picture's just so cute.
It is. It is.
And the last one is what I see when I see a horse, which teaches you how to go up and see, you know, are the zygomas, the cheekbones and the lacrimal bones, are they in balance? You know, what's going on, the hooves, the saddle, the back, what causes the kissing spine, what causes the bucking.
Fantastic. Well, that way people can find out what they can do with their horses, starting
In
with
little,
the easy one.
yeah, little bits, you know, because we're all on overwhelm with everything that's out there now.
Yeah, yeah. It is definitely overwhelming. I like your idea of the 5-minute solution, and that way you're not watching the whole thing and getting falling asleep or whatever.
You know, we're on
Yeah.
Apple, Spotify, all of those, Buzzsprout, so you can listen to it while you're driving to the barn, you
Ah,
know.
perfect.
Or you go on YouTube and, you know, side bone, ring bone calcification, stiff knees, colicky horse, and you find all my helpful videos of what to do while you're waiting for the vet. That's what I always say. Here's something you can do while you're waiting for the vet. Because my horse always had issues on Memorial Day, Labor Day. I lived through a canyon. It'd be 6 hours before the vet could come out.
Yeah, it's always Memorial Day or Labor Day.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you didn't say get up on your horse and plug in the podcast and listen then, because
Yeah,
that's when you're supposed to be listening to the horse,
Right.
correct.
right? Yeah, so that's
I
great.
tell people your horse is walking off because they know you're going to kick them and they're trying to avoid the kick.
Okay.
Supposed to stand still till you kick it. Really? I just go and off we go.
Okay. So, Joan, any thoughts on all this stuff?
No, I just love all the information.
Yeah, it goes right down your alley in terms of the communication anyway.
Hmm.
It's just another way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
EFT, because the EFT is all on acupressure points, and yeah.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah,
taken
I did 2 years of EFT tapping.
I have a book out for EFT for animals, but yeah, I did. I've done a lot of cranial work, so it's studied with a lot of people, and for horses and dogs, and first got certified in 1998, so it's one of my great loves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say that's a long time, but to me, it's not that long anymore. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you very much, April. So if people
Thank
want to get more information, they can certainly get hold of that, snaffle that book, and
Mhm.
we'll have the link right below. And I looked at it, and that is all you do is go click it, and it's right there in front of your nose.
Yeah. HorseAcademy101.com. And everything else is just HolisticHorseworks, 2 YouTube channels, LinkedIn, podcast, everything, and the website. So
Lots of
and
stuff.
you go to my homepage and everybody's like, oh my God, it's so much information. And I'm like, yeah, but it's there. Educate yourself.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the key. This is why that's why we decided to do this conference.
Mhm.
We're trying to get the information out. We're trying to get people to realize that you don't just have to call your vet on speed dial number.
Or if he's 5 hours away, what do you do while you're waiting for him when blood is gushing out of the wound?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what my 102 book is about. This is what you're going to do while you're waiting for the vet. And then an hour later, you're like, I'm sorry, I don't need you. And he's going, good, because I have a stuck calf and I'm still trying to pull it out.
There you go. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, April.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's been really good. And thank you everyone for watching. And hopefully you've got a little bit of an insight on, gee, this is something else that I can do to make my horse's life better.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all for. Okay. So thank you both of you. Thanks for calling, Joan. Okay. And we'll catch you in the next webinar.